We're getting ready for week 13, and it's not just any week for fantasy football. It's also Thanksgiving week. We're going to have a full day of games, starting with the Packers and the Lions. And so, sure, a lot of viable fantasy options there. And then there's Jameson Williams. Man, like you said, just when people start to believe in him, he disappears. So, Chris, if you could compare JMO to a Thanksgiving dish, what would it be?
It would have to be turkey because, every now and then it's cooked just right and it's absolutely fantastic. But most of the time, just leaves you disappointed.
Well, let's figure out who's going to be leaving you disappointed, but who's going to be just right for your fantasy lineup in week 13. Let's talk about all the wide receivers you need to know. Nobody on bye this week. Keep in mind, we got 3 games on Thursday and a game on Friday. So let's get those lineups set early, starting with the must starts. If you got these guys, don't worry. Start Jackson Smith and Jigba, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, and Rashee Rice if he's healthy. One more decision that should be very easy to make. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Look, we're trying to help you win in fantasy football every week, all season long and all off season. Help us out. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. We're on the way to 100K. We're trying to get there before the season is over. Well, let's start with the first game of the week. It's the Packers at the Lions. All right, so yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown absolutely is in your lineup, no questions asked, unlike those other Lions receivers. But what about the Packers here? So Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. What about Jaden Reed? He might be nearing a return. If he does come back, that's probably just going to mess things up here, right? I mean, who do you like in this matchup?
Well, the one I like the most is Christian Watson. We've seen him. He's trending up here. Plus, the Lions play the most man defense of anybody in the NFL. He's got a 2.79 yards per route run and a 0.82 fantasy points per route run versus man coverage. We know he's got touchdown potential. We know he's got upside, but this is still a tough matchup against this Lions secondary. So I'm going to say low end solid, but at least he's got upside. Jaden Reed, I will only say a flex if he comes back. I mean, he's definitely a guy not as good versus man, but I guess he's got potential. And then Dobbs, this guy, 2 targets last week. What happened here? 2 targets. He's not very good against man coverage. Tough Lions defense. I'm just going to sit him.
Well, I share exactly what you feel about Watson. He's been trending up. I mean, he's clearly become the top target here. 31.8% target share last week was the second highest of his career. And now, it doesn't mean it's going to keep escalating, especially if Reed comes back, but they're going to need him. They're going to lean on him. He's healthy. He's looking good. So I feel like Watson should be solid this week in a game where they're probably going to need to pass quite a bit. I think Dobbs barely clings to the flex tier just because he'll probably get a few more targets than last week, right? And then Jaden Reed, let me see how he looks first. All right, what about Jameson Williams? Of course, right? Of course, just when you buy into him, 7% target share last week? Does that mean that we should just never trust him again? Or does that mean that, of course, now that we're going to give up on him, he's due to break out?
Well, probably closer to the second one here, but this is a tough matchup this week. Packers, the toughest versus outside wide receivers. They play the 4th most zone of any team here. He's been way better against man than zone, but he always does at least have that upside. So I'm going to say a strong flex, but like a boom-bust flex.
I mean, that's just what he should always be, right? Boom, bust, flex. We should know better than to ever think him any differently, and we never know when he's going to boom or bust. But look, honestly, just based on what should happen, it's not a great spot for him. He's a risky flex for me. Also on Thursday, it's going to be the Chiefs at the Cowboys. So Rashee Rice was banged up a little bit in that game. I know he played in overtime, but we're going to have to keep an eye here. If he plays, though, you just have to play him. But what about the other Chiefs receivers? And, it's fair to ask because really they haven't been relevant. But what if Rashee Rice does miss? Xavier Worthy, who also left that game with a nagging hamstring injury that's been bothering him. Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton, Juju Smith-Schuster. I could go on.
Well, I think the one we're going to really want here is Xavier Worthy if Rashee Rice misses. But I'll say even if Rashee Rice plays, I think this week he can be flex because he did show a little bit of signs of life last week, and even though the Cowboys defense has looked better, it didn't look any better against the pass last week. Still looked terrible against wide receivers. Now, on the downside here, the Cowboys do play the second most zone. Worthy has not been great versus zone as compared to man, but that didn't seem to matter for A.J. Brown last week. So I think with or without Rice, he's worth a flex. The other guys, I mean, okay, if Rice misses, maybe I could consider them, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, look, if Rice is out, which is the only way I would even think about the rest of this receiving room, it's probably just going to be a lot of Kelsey, right? And look, I might consider Worthy, but obviously that hamstring has been bothering him. I don't know if that explains his struggles recently, but I just don't want to deal with it. I'm going to sit any Chiefs receiver who isn't Rice. And then sharp viewers might have noticed CeeDee Lamb not in the must-start category anymore. And so we got to talk about not only CeeDee Lamb, but George Pickens. Should Pickens just take his place? I mean, is he the new number one guy there, not only in Dallas, but should he be the new number one receiver in fantasy?
Well, I don't know if I can go quite that far. I did pose a question. Do we just put Pickens on the must start and take CeeDee Lamb off? So we're not quite there yet, I guess. But I said all last week, I don't care that it's a tough matchup for Pickens. I mean, there were definitely players I said no to. I said to start over Pickens, like better wide receivers. But for the most part, I was like, I am not benching George Pickens. I am not benching George Pickens. Let me say it again. I am not benching George Pickens. I don't care it's the Chiefs. I don't care it's a tough matchup. Come on. This guy has to be in every fantasy lineup this week. And then I will say CeeDee Lamb. I'm probably not benching CeeDee Lamb either. I know he can't catch the football right now for some reason, but he's still getting a ton of targets. Still getting opportunities. Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but it's also the Cowboys at home and the Cowboys offense. These guys are both strong starts. Come on.
Yeah, at this point, you just fire them both up. I mean, yes, I will not suggest benching George Pickens the rest of the season unless something crazy happens. So you start him and you start CeeDee Lamb. I mean, look, he hasn't put up elite numbers lately, but let's not get carried away by a small sample size and the fact that George Pickens has been better in fantasy. This is still a spot you want CeeDee Lamb in your lineup. Got one more game on Thanksgiving night, Bengals at the Ravens. Before we talk about that game, don't forget, while you're setting your lineups for Week 13, get your picks in on Underdog, right? Got a lot of action. It is feast week, so you're going to have all sorts of goodies, promos, right? Profit boosts, free picks in your lobby, so go check that out. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, of course, this is a great time to do so. You know that you'll also get, as a new customer, the special gimme pick, Lamar Jackson just getting a yard on Thanksgiving Day. All right, you get the free pick. You're going to get up to $1,000 of bonus cash in your account as soon as you sign up for the first time on Underdog. Just make sure you use code ENDGAME when you do that. And then as soon as you play $5 towards any picks, you'll get another $100 in bonus funds. It's a great time to do it. So before Feast Week gets underway, try Underdog, but use code ENDGAME before you check out. And Thanksgiving night, we're going to see the Bengals at the Ravens. All right, so as far as the Bengals go, again, things are going to be different. We are going to have Jamar Chase back, and you just start him. We're not going to have T. Higgins because of concussion protocol. There's no way he clears before Thursday night. So once again, can you pivot to Andre Yosevich? Should we be interested in Mitchell Tinsley after he scored last week?
He scored, but he had 2 catches for 29 yards. I mean, I guess he could score, but I mean, come on. Are you really taking this chance? I'm not doing it. I will say Yosevich could be flexed here. With T out, he does have another chance, right, to be kind of like the number 2 receiver here. Burrow should be back this week, which helps, so I think you could flex him.
Yeah, just remember that last year Joe Burrow absolutely destroyed the Ravens defense, and this Ravens defense is definitely not better than last year's defense. That said, let's not go crazy with Yosevich. He's flex worthy. I mean, you'd have to be pretty desperate and really deep league to consider Mitchell Tinsley, right? So let's just say sit. And for Baltimore, I mean, Zay Flowers just keeps on being mediocre. I mean, he's been okay. He's been thoroughly okay every week. I don't know how else to describe it. Where is the ceiling? Is it this week because it's the Bengals defense?
No, I actually felt better about him last week against the Jets and the Bengals because as we saw last week with like Stephon Diggs is that they're so bad against running backs and tight ends that you don't even really need to throw to the wide receivers here. So yeah, it's a good matchup. But like you said, how many good matchups has he had? Where is the ceiling here? I'm just going to say a strong flex.
Yeah, I mean, it should be Derrick Henry, and probably Mark Andrews will go off. You know what? Probably even Isaiah Likely might make an appearance. Who knows? I mean, look, you can start Flowers. He'll get you double-digit PPR points. barely. So he's just a low-end solid option.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start, sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play, or use these handy QR codes. And first-time users can use code ENDGAME to get 10 free credits and get your questions answered today.
And don't forget, on Friday, we're going to have football. It's going to be the Bears taking on the Eagles. So this Bears offense, it's putting up points, it's looking good, but now we are thoroughly confused about which receiver it is to start on a weekly basis. It should have been a Rome week last week based on the schemes, and it was a DJ Moore week, which we've barely said this season. Now, Luther Burden is also in the mix. He continues to trend upwards in terms of his participation. So there's a lot to digest here. Against this Eagles defense in Philly, I mean, do you really feel good about any of them?
You can't feel good about any of them. I'm going to say Luther Burden, yes, he's trending up, but not enough for me to start on the road in Philly. Like, Rome Odunze still had 9 targets last week. He was still clearly the number 1 wide receiver, even if he didn't have the best game here. But the real question here is he going to get the Quinyon Mitchell shadow, or is Quinyon Mitchell not going to shadow here because they have Odunze and DJ Moore? This is going to be a tough call here. I'm just going to say Rome Odunze a strong flex this week. I mean, the Bears on the road in Philly, you can't feel good anyways. And like DJ Moore, I guess, showed signs of life, but man, this is very, very risky. Just a risky flex.
Yeah, so I'm treating this trio in Chicago kind of like I treated the Colts receivers last week against Kansas City. They're all just kind of low-end flex options for me. Don't expect much from any of them, to be honest. So if you need them, you can play them, but I'd rather look elsewhere. Now, on the other hand, those Philly receivers, well, they were both pretty good last week, especially A.J. Brown. Now we're seeing a little more consistency out of this passing game. So against this Bears defense, which continues to have all sorts of injuries, I guess the question is, do you prefer one over the other?
I don't know if I can say I prefer one over the other this week. I got to think for the Bears. I mean, Jalen Johnson thought he was going to return last week. He didn't. I got to think he's back this week. That definitely is going to help this secondary here. But still, this isn't like a horrible matchup here, and the Eagles cannot run the football right now. I'm going to say both these guys solid this week, although can't say I really love either of them this week.
We've got to like them both because the Bears defense does give up points to the wide receiver. They allow the 4th most yards per target, and they've given up the 4th most touchdowns to wide receivers. And after the early season, like malaise and all the complaining and the drama, like whatever, they're focused. They are back. This Eagles offense, at least, this offense is good enough in the passing game. I like them both. They're high-end solid picks against this Bears defense. All right, now we got the Saints at Dolphins. Not the most exciting matchup for fantasy, but there is still at least one high-end receiver on each side. Let's start with Chris Olave in New Orleans. Was good, not great last week because he didn't reach the end zone. Can he do it against Miami?
I mean, you can say that about almost everybody. A guy gets you 7 catches, 90 yards, you're going to take that every single week or not. Not everybody can be Jackson Smith and Jigba and get 150-plus yards every week. Let's be a little realistic here, but maybe this is the week he finds the end zone because Miami allows the 4th most points to outside wide receivers. He had a 44% first read percentage, 13 targets, plus he did get an end zone target, so the chance was there. You got to start him this week. Very solid.
Yeah, and I've been saying it wasn't just last week's matchup. I like Olave the rest of the season. The schedule is nice. He's getting so many targets, even more than he had previously. The target share is just going to be massive. So he's a borderline must start, even if he doesn't necessarily have the upside to score as many points as some of those other receivers ahead of him because they're in better offenses. And then it's kind of the same thing in Miami. It's basically all Jalen Waddle. I don't know, maybe Malik Washington is worth a flex because it's the Saints.
Risky, very risky flex for Malik Washington. Saints actually are the 3rd toughest versus slot wide receivers, so don't know why, but they are risky flex here. But come on, Jalen Waddle. Saints play the 7th most single high. He dominates single high, even though I think before the bye we said he would boom because whoever they were playing in that game, I forget, played a ton of single high and he didn't boom. But come on, the Saints, this is another boom spot. Very solid.
I mean, I see these guys, Olave, Waddle, kind of the same. Massive target share. a little bit limited by their offensive context, but you've got to feel really good about having Waddle in your lineup this week. Now we got a divisional matchup with the Texans taking on the Colts in Indianapolis this week. All right, so as far as Houston goes, I mean, they've been getting the job done. I know it's mostly the defense, but look, the offense at least is looking more efficient. If CJ Stroud comes back as expected, I mean, does that mess things up here?
There's no way after watching Davis Mills last week we can think CJ Stroud is going to mess anything up. They had 35 yards in the second half. That was abysmal. But I will say, this is not a great matchup for these wide receivers. Look, the Colts now have Charvarius Ward and Sauce Gardner on either side out here. This is not a great spot here, but still, I can't drop Nico any lower than solid here. And I'll say Jaden Higgins, he's been coming on. I talked about him in the video about it. He's coming on here, but again, he plays primarily on the outside. He's going to have to deal with Ward and Sauce, but he does have 5 end zone targets over the last 3 games, which gives him touchdown upside. So I'm just going to say a strong flex.
Yeah, so I talked about Higgins as a sneaky waiver wire ad here. Maybe not the highest ceiling because he's clearly behind Nico Collins. I know technically Kirk is still in the mix, but he's getting more involved. Touchdowns in 3 of the last 5 games. So Higgins is flex worthy and, not a bad matchup here. And as far as Nico, part of the thing, this Texans offense has become smarter. They're not just trying to go deep all the time. They know that teams are going to try to keep things contained from underneath, not make Nico Collins just beat them single-handedly. So it does limit his upside a little bit, but Nico Collins still gets a ton of targets. Yeah, I don't think CJ Stroud is a downgrade. I'm not saying that. So I think Nico is solid. Don't expect a massive game from him, he's still probably one of your better options. Now, we didn't like the Colts receivers for fantasy last week. I think we have to like them even less. This Texans defense, as we keep saying, is elite. I mean, do you want to start any of them?
I don't want to start any of them. I mean, against the Texans, this is becoming one of those defenses you just want to stay away from if you can. But I will say you can flex Michael Pittman. He is still, like all the talk about Alec Pierce taking over. All right, no, it's still Michael Pittman is still the number 1 guy here, but you can't love it this week. Alec Pierce, barely even just a risky flex this week, and no chance I would start Josh Downs.
Yeah, well, in terms of yardage, none of them really did anything. We did see Pittman score. I mean, he always has that potential to score, but you cannot count on it. So Pittman and Pierce, I'll say, could be flexed. Just don't love it. And Downs, you don't have to think about them. The Falcons are going to take on the Jets this week. And so a lot of us are really hoping that Drake London does return. If so, you just automatically fire him up against this Jets defense. And if he doesn't, what about Darnell Mooney, who, let's face it, he kind of was bailed out, or he bailed you out if you started him with that late touchdown.
Yeah, he definitely bailed you out here. I'll say if London is out again, you can flex Mooney just because it is the Jets. But come on, only a 13% target share with London out. You cannot feel good here. Just a flex because it's such a good matchup. If London plays, you got to still play London. I know it's Cousins. Doesn't make me feel as good. They're probably just going to run the ball 40 times if they can. But this is Drake London. He's still a strong start.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an award for biggest tease in fantasy football, but if there is, Darnell Mooney would get it now twice in a row without London. Could have smashed and didn't. But look, he's only a flex if London is out, like you said. And if London plays, I'm pretty much just playing him. I don't feel like it's a massive game necessarily because of Kirk Cousins, but he's got to be at least a high-end solid option. Now for the Jets, I mean, it was fair to ask, who are the wide receivers for the New York Jets these days? It's 2 guys that they acquired via trade, Adonai Mitchell from the Colts and John Mechie, who used to be with the Texans. And look, these 2 young guys are getting their opportunities. They got targeted. Only one of them chose to actually catch his targets, and that was John Mechie. Oh, look, they were both targeted pretty equally here. Do you feel like anything shifts here? Do you actually want any of them in fantasy?
Do I want either of them in fantasy? I mean, no, I definitely don't. It's hard to want a Jets wide receiver. Although I will say, I really strongly consider putting John Mechie on the sneaky starts, and I completely chickened out because I'm like, it's the Jets, it's Tyrod Taylor, I can't do it. I should have done it. I think even this week, again, Mechie, I'm going to say a strong flex because he's getting targets and he actually catches his targets and he's scoring touchdowns, and Tyrod Taylor at least makes the offense look somewhat serviceable. Adonai Mitchell, like I said this on the live streams and stuff, like it doesn't matter how many targets you get. You're an NFL wide receiver. You have to be able to catch the football, and he can't catch the football.
Yeah, Mitchell, like all the talent in the world, just hasn't come to fruition yet. Let's just keep him maybe stashed if you really have a lot of bench space. Mechie, look, he showed something here, right? He's getting his shot. This is a super talented receiver. Just it never clicked for him in Houston. Maybe now it will, but let's not go overboard. He's only a flex option if you need one. All right, now let's talk 49ers at Browns in Cleveland here. May not be the best place for this 49ers offense. And look, just when I thought, hey, back at full strength, clicking on all cylinders here, then Brock Purdy did not exactly have a great showing on Monday Night Football. On the road in Cleveland doesn't make me feel much better, but at least Juwan Jennings did something unlike Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, you cannot feel good here on the road in Cleveland. But at the same time, like, Purdy can't be that bad again, right? I got to think he's going to be better here. I'm going to say Jennings low end solid here because, you know, he does get targets. He has a chance to score, but it is a tough matchup. Pearsall, how can you start this guy right now? Like, show me something first.
Yeah, I really thought he would do something more in his second game back. No, it's too soon. Like, if there's possibility here to buy low, if you still can trade in your league, I would buy low on him because you could probably get him for nothing at this point, but don't start him. And Jennings, I'll put him in the flex category. Still worried about this Cleveland defense. I know they're much better against the run, but they still have not given up a lot of big games to wide receivers either. And so, yeah, I'm a little worried. And speaking of worried, well, look, Shedeur Sanders for what's worth in his first start wasn't that bad, but the receivers really didn't do much of anything here. I mean, we still can't start them, can we?
No, I mean, Judy did something. He stopped running and fumbled the football. I mean, this guy is like a meme at this point, right? Like, come on, this guy isn't even like real. I don't even know if Jerry Judy's real, honestly. You can't start Jerry Judy. You can't start Cedric Tillman. No.
Rams going to take on the Panthers this week. You got Puka. You don't think about it. You start him. And I almost feel the same about Devontae Adams. I mean, this guy will not stop scoring touchdowns, and I don't feel like he'll stop against Carolina this week either.
Nah, I mean, what are we doing? We're disrespecting George Pickens, not putting him in the must start, disrespecting Hall of Famer Devontae Adams, not having him in the must start. Like, come on, what are we doing? Strong, you got to start Devontae Adams.
Now the Panthers side, not quite so simple. All right, so obviously we know the Rams are a pretty good team. So you might think on the one hand, hey, Carolina will probably have to pass a lot. But that doesn't always exactly happen. And of course, we saw the huge letdown in week 12 after the huge outburst from Bryce Young the week before. So where does that leave Tedero McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker?
Well, I'm not even going to consider Legette, Coker, anybody else here against the Rams. No chance here. Okay, McMillan did score last week, so that was nice. But, I mean, he did hardly anything outside of that. This is now one of the toughest matchups here against this Rams defense. Yeah, that felt like a trap last week. It was a trap last week. I'm not going to completely avoid McMillan here because he is the number one wide receiver, but just a flex.
Yeah, and, you know, generally Carolina is better at home. But, man, this Rams team is too tough. Yeah, I think McMillan is just a flex. He has upside, but not a lot of it. Right now, Jags at Titans. All right, so once again, is it possible that Brian Thomas Jr. returns and plays this week? And if he does, how do you feel about him? And then what about Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington? Both these guys were pretty solid last week.
Yeah, this is getting really interesting in Jacksonville. Now we have Brenton Strange in the mix too. It's like all of a sudden there's all these pass catchers who all kind of like do the same thing. They all catch the ball close to the line of scrimmage and that's it. But I'll say, look, it's a good enough matchup this week against the Titans that I'm going to say all these guys are flex worthy, even BTJ if he plays, because yeah, none of them have a massive ceiling. And again, there's just too many mouths to feed, I feel like now, but all of them have potential in a good matchup.
Very good matchup here. Titans allow the third most yards per target. If BTJ comes back, it complicates things, but I will just say because of that, if he does play, I will actually consider flexing him. That's it. You know, and if he doesn't, I'll put Jacoby Myers in the low end of the solid tier because I know it's more floor than ceiling, but that floor feels very solid to me. I mean, I think He's a guy who continues to get that production. Parker Washington's a little more inconsistent. So they're all viable this week, though. And if there's one, and there is probably only one Titans receiver that you would consider, it's Chimere DK. I mean, he's shown up a little bit and disappeared. He showed up again last week. What does he do this week?
Well, he did show up last week, but I worry about this week. Jags, tough defense, not to mention they are tough. 6th toughest against slot wide receivers this year, but he is the number one guy here, I guess. So you can flex him, but I don't love it.
I mean, he's kind of the only guy there, really, because the others are all hurt. I mean, the only other player that was even getting catches were tight ends there in Tennessee. They're going to have to pass the ball. He's a flex option because not only is he getting a decent target share, but he's the type of player who could always take one to the house, as we saw last week. The Cardinals are going to take on the Bucs this week. So we got to wonder, is Marvin Harrison Jr. going to return? If so, he's coming into a little bit different kind of offense. Not only Jacoby Brissett running things, but Michael Wilson all of a sudden looks legit. So how good do you feel about Harrison if he's active? And then what does that mean for Wilson?
Well, you can't feel as good about Harrison if he's active because you got to think first of all, how is this guy? How's Michael Wilson just been out here running wind sprints for 3 years and he's able to do this? Like, really? Like, how do they not know this guy has even existed? But you got to worry now when Harrison comes back. Like, last week I was saying, look, when Harrison comes back, Wilson goes back to waiver wire fodder. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think these guys might be like 1A, 1B here. So can't feel great as good about Harrison here, but it is still a good matchup against the Bucs. The Bucs allowing the 5th most points to outside wide receivers. And with the way Brissett's playing, you got to feel pretty good here. I'm going to say both are solid. If Harrison's out, Michael Wilson probably gets bumped back up to strong, but assuming he's back, both are solid. And then Greg Dortch, only if Harrison is out, can be considered a flex.
I mean, I agree with all that basically. It just makes you wonder, what if there were a different quarterback other than Kyler Murray these last couple of years? What could Michael Wilson have become? We're seeing it, right? He's finally showing he is not just a guy who can run a go route and catch the ball once in a while. He has shown that he can be an asset here. I don't think that just suddenly stops if Harrison is active. So maybe not as many targets, of course, but I think he's still solid here in this matchup, and I think Harrison will be solid as well. I'm only flexing Dortch if Harrison's out, though. Now, on the other hand, a team and offense, especially a passing game, that just continues to trend downward. And then now, what if Baker Mayfield is out? I mean, Emeka Egbuka clearly has been the guy who has, been declining here in terms of fantasy. I mean, what if it's Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback? Can you even start him?
Well, I think you can still start him, but you can't feel good here. I feel like this is a guy who's been living off what he did earlier in the season, which was really mostly a lot of touchdowns here. 5 of the last 6 games, less than 10 PPR points. If it's Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, I don't even know if it matters really, because even Baker Mayfield, this passing game has been trending down and down and down the last few weeks. And how healthy is he even, if he even plays this week? I'm going to just say a strong flex because the Cardinals aren't a defense that scares me. He still does have that touchdown, big play upside, but man, you cannot feel very good these days.
No, I mean, look, Teddy B is not the worst backup quarterback out there, but at the same time, in this whole offense is kind of struggling here. So Egbuka, just a flex, and just because he could score, really. Chris Godwin, we didn't want him anyways before the Baker injury. There's no way you consider Godwin, and I think we can just forget about Ted Johnson for now. All right, now Vikings at Seahawks. Interestingly enough, we got the number 1 fantasy receiver here. It's not Justin Jefferson, it's JSN. You got him, you start him. Do we want to start Justin Jefferson? I can't believe it's week 13 and we're asking that question. Is he startable? JJ McCarthy has been so bad. Well, thankfully, he has a concussion and will not play this week most likely. But how does that make you feel better that we've got a 3rd-string quarterback named Max Brosmer behind the helm?
This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. I cannot believe what is going on here. Seahawks 7th toughest versus outside wide receivers, but really the matchup here is not Jefferson against the defense because we know he can beat any defense. It's Jefferson versus his QBs, and I don't think he can beat these QBs. I'm only going to say a strong flex. And look, Jordan Addison, no.
No, it's Jefferson or bust. Look, I think as worried as I was about McCarthy this year, he was far worse than I imagined he could be. I honestly think this has to be an upgrade. Maybe I'm being a little too optimistic or just hoping against hope here with Jefferson. I'll put him at the low end of the solid tier because he's got to get targeted a bunch this week. I know it's not a good matchup, but come on, they've got to figure something out. And for Seattle, I mean, they've got an elite receiver for sure. I don't know so much about the other guys. Are Rashid Shaheed or Cooper Kupp ever going to kind of show up again?
I don't know. Why did they even trade for Rashid Shaheed? They don't even throw the football to this guy. I mean, literally, they don't even throw it to him. Why did they even make this trade? I don't know. Yeah, no chance you could start Shaheed. And then Kupp, Vikings fourth toughest versus the slot. No, you can't start these guys. Come on.
No, it's weird. I mean, they just finally kind of realized we don't need to throw it to anybody else except for Jackson Smith and Jigma, so why bother? Now let's talk Bills, Steelers. Really not a whole lot of options here. I mean, for Buffalo, the only guy you could really consider at wideout is Khalil Shakir. He's coming off a big game, so does he do it again?
He should. Steelers allow the 7th most points to slot wide receivers. They play the 6th most single high, and he's much better versus single high than 2 high. Like you said, they don't really have anybody else to throw it to. I think he's solid this week.
Always feels pretty solid, just slightly volatile depending on the matchup from week to week, and there's nothing to move him down from that tier this week. And then for the Steelers, I mean, look, it's DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin. Maybe it was Roman Wilson. Who cares? I don't think those guys matter. How much does DK Metcalf even matter? I mean, honestly, any thought of a ceiling for him feels like it's just fading.
No, there's no ceiling here. This is a floor play, and by floor play, I mean I hope he scores so he gives me a floor, right? Bills 11th toughest versus outside wide receivers. He's only topped 50 yards 4 times all season. I think he only has one 100-yard game, and that was that overseas game where he took a short little pass 80 yards to the house. Like, there is no upside here, but he could score. So I'll say a strong flex because, again, there are plenty of wide receivers. I'm like, yeah, I'm still starting DK Metcalf over that guy.
Yeah, I really thought maybe Mason Rudolph might be slightly better for DK. And sure, he caught 5 passes on 8 targets for 22 yards. Now, to be fair, he did leave with injury for part of that game before coming back. But still, come on. It's like this offense has settled into being so conservative. DK Metcalf is just barely a flex. This week, the Raiders are going to take on the Chargers. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator because Chip Kelly is gone. Does that mean anything for, I don't know, I guess Trey Tucker?
I don't know. Yeah, now they're going to run the offense through Trey Tucker. No, I don't think this means anything for Trey Tucker. Yeah, I mean, come on. Chargers, this is a tough matchup. 4th toughest versus outside wide receivers, but even worse than that is Geno Smith is 2nd behind only the Vikings quarterbacks in terms of the toughest matchup against his own wide receivers. Cannot start Trey Tucker.
Well, I think that there's hope here that they've made a change at OC. Maybe they make a change at QB. I mean, doesn't sound like that's happening this week. I mean, Trey Tucker's the only guy I could think of in that wide receiver room that actually might have a chance to be viable. He'll get targets. Look, there were a couple of plays. He was wide open, and Geno missed him. Could have made some big plays. I don't know if it'll happen this week, but he could be a flip. Now here we go with the Chargers. They have too many weapons. We need to figure out who could be better this week. Got Lam McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. Does the matchup favor any of these guys more than the other?
Well, the matchup technically favors Keenan this week because the Raiders played the most zone, or 2nd most zone, I believe. They're up there, one of the highest in zone, and he's been much better against zone. And then randomly before the bye, after trending down for multiple weeks and hardly running any routes, he ran more routes than Ladd McConkey. Why? Who knows? What? The NFL is just crazy, right? This is insane. It's absolutely insane. So I'm going to say Keenan a strong flex. I still have to keep Ladd solid, but I'm going to say lower end solid because he's not as good versus zone as he is versus man. And I will say this is actually a good matchup for QJ because the Raiders do allow the 4th most points to outside wide receivers. But again, he tends to struggle against zone, so I can just say a flex.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep the rankings pretty much the same as you here. I do feel like this could be one of those sneaky QJ weeks. Not he's going to have a huge game, but could get a touchdown, make a big play down the field. Although I also feel like maybe this is a Rondé Gadsden week. So again, we can't go crazy here. Again, too many options in the passing game. Raiders are pretty much pass funnel still. So I like all of these receivers, but I can't go any higher than what we've got. On Sunday night, we're going to have the Broncos taking on the Commanders. All right, so here's the question. Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin. Is there any separation between these two? Because, on the season, their stats are very similar, but lately it's been more Franklin and less Sutton. A lot of people are thinking that Franklin is like the guy now. Is that how you see it?
I don't know. No, that's not really how I see it. I mean, he might slightly be the guy, but these guys are so close, and it's such a good matchup against the Commanders. I think you can start either of these guys and feel pretty good this week. Look, one of them may score, the other one may not, and then you're going to be like, oh, I wish I started that guy, but they're both going to have opportunities here. They're both solid.
Yeah, I doubt anything will be magically fixed with this Washington defense just because they had a week off. Over the past month, they've been bottom 3 against quarterbacks and wide receivers. Both Sutton and Franklin should absolutely be solid. Now, if something maybe got fixed over the bye, it's Terry McLaurin and his quad issue. He's been out so much this year. Does he come back? Do you want to start him if he does? And if not, what about Debo?
Let's hope he comes back, right? Let's hope he comes back. But this is not a great spot to be coming back to. Plus, we could be seeing the return of Pat Surtain, so we could be looking at the Surtain shadow here. I mean, even if Surtain is out, how good can we feel about these guys against the Broncos here? I'm just going to say both flexes, and not flexes I love.
No, because, Denver's defense, legit. And one thing that also isn't going to change, Jaden Daniels not ready to come back. Marcus Mariota, there's not a whole lot of hope for these guys having big games this week. So both, assuming Terry even plays, would barely be flex options. And then Monday night, we're going to have the Giants taking on the Patriots. All right, so Wan'Dale Robinson, sure, have yourself a game randomly. But that was with Jameis Winston at quarterback, and it might be Jackson Dart again. So now you have to wonder, is that even better for him?
I don't know if it's better. I mean, that was one of the most random performances, right? Like a bad matchup here, and he goes off, just goes off last week. Like, what the heck? But this is not a great matchup either. Patriots kind of just middle of the road versus slot wide receivers. I'm not expecting him to do that again. It feels like he does this a few times a year, and then the next week he gets 7 catches for 25 yards or something. So he's a flex. I'm not starting any other wide receivers here against the Patriots. So
yeah, you're exactly right. We've seen this before. Huge Wan'Dale game, and it goes away for a couple of weeks. He's kind of like the slot version of Jameson Williams, right? But anyways, look, a lot of times this is just what Jameis Winston does. He feeds one guy. When he's on fire, it all clicks, and it clicked last week. And then now he's probably not going to be the quarterback this week. So no, don't buy into it. You could flex him, just keep your expectations real. And the expectations for any other Giants receiver would be nothing. What do we expect from the Patriots wide receivers, though? Sure, they didn't have to do a whole lot against Cincy last week. Will they really have to do anything this week against the Giants?
I don't know if they will, but I don't think Hunter Henry is going to go off for some monster game this week. Hunter Henry is going to be another trap this week. I'm just letting you know that right now. We haven't got to the tight end video yet, but he's a trap this week. I like Diggs again this week. One thing about the Bengals, they just don't throw it to, or you don't have to throw it to your wide receivers because you can just run the ball and throw it to the tight ends and win the game. So I will say one thing that was interesting with Diggs last week is he ran 80% of his routes out of the slot last week. So that's actually good here because Cordell Flott, the cornerback for the Giants, has been a stud. He shut down. He's the one, he shadowed Jameson Williams last week and held him to a 0. So I think this is a good spot for Diggs. Giants allow the 5th most points to slot wide receivers. I think this is a big bounce back spot for Diggs. Booty, no, not doing it here. He's probably going to get stuck facing Flott. And then Douglas, just a risky flex because he too also does play out of the slot, although his routes are very limited.
Yeah, so I'm worried that this matchup won't be too different from last week where, it's mainly the running game that does the lifting for the Pats. They just don't need to throw it that much, but if they do throw it, it's probably going to be Diggs. I think he could still be solid. That target share had been really consistent and growing until last week because they just didn't need to throw it to him, right? So I feel like Diggs could be a solid option, and I'm probably not going to risk anybody else in this wide receiver room. All right, it's a lot to digest there with every team in action in Week 13. You make sure that you get it right because you need to win heading towards your fantasy postseason. Don't forget, we got you covered at running back, quarterback, tight end, and so much more to help you win this week. Check out this week's playlist.